So generally, when we prepare a speech, we come up with all of the subjects ourselves. However, every once in a while, due to the course of events, a speech chooses us. And so that is why today, because of the course of events that have taken place in our world, in our country, and in my life, I want to speak to you today about the importance of us as human beings seeking to understand each other. We are in a world today where people refuse to listen to individuals that have a different worldview than they do. Often that person with that different worldview, with that different viewpoint, is seen as the enemy. Sometimes they're even seen as evil. And that has got to change. Now, the research that I did for this book, for this presentation today, comes primarily from Dr. Jonathan Haidt. He is a social psychologist on staff at New York University who wrote a book called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Now, this is the primary resource for my presentation today, but you all have paper in front of you that has additional resources that I use, plus the charts that we're going to look at today. Now, Dr. Haidt has established 5 moral foundations. He says there are more, but these 5 are the most important, and they are care, fairness, authority, loyalty, and purity. And what Dr. Haidt has found is that based on where you are in terms of your values determines the importance that you place on a given foundation. What he's found is that people who tend to be more liberal in their values, the care and the fairness foundations are extremely important. And as you look at the chart, you can see that care and fairness are way up here. Now, for people who tend to have more conservative values, it's a little bit more even across the board. Now, the reason that that's important is because of the lens that we look at the world through. If a person tends to be more liberal in their values, then care and fairness are going to shape how they see the world. Whereas the person with more conservative values says, well, but why don't you value loyalty, authority, or purity? And the case is that it's not necessarily that they don't value, it's just not as important to them. And that affects the way we communicate. So what I want to do today is look at basically two of these foundations. One that's more important to people with conservative values, which is authority, and one that's more important to people with more liberal values, which is fairness. And look at how we communicate differently based on how we value that. Now, with people who have more liberal values, I said that fairness was truly important, and so they're going to look at the world through that lens of fairness, and the way that the world is seen is through global fairness. Let's take a look at it. Now, if you look at the picture there, I believe it's on your left, that is a picture of someone at a protest, and it says, "Marching for the meek, the weary, the hungry, the homeless, tax the wealthy, fair and square." And as you can see, that is a very global view of what is fair. It's fair to take a little bit from someone who's way up here in order to take and give it to someone who's down here and lift them up. It is sort of a Robin Hood view of fairness. The key there is equity. The problem is that someone with more conservative values doesn't see that as fair. Look at the sign that they hold up. Stop punishing success, stop rewarding failure. And the reason for that is because the person with the conservative values is looking and saying, you have someone that started down here, and they worked, and they worked, and they were able to lift themselves up, and it is unfair to remove from them and give to someone who isn't willing to contribute. Now understand, it's not about need. Both conservatives and liberals would say if a person is in need, then they should be helped. The conservative viewpoint, however, is that these aren't people in need, these are people who aren't willing to, and we should not be giving to them. Both are talking in language of fairness, but they're speaking differently. It's a different viewpoint. Let's look at authority. Now, I had a friend of mine who told me that both liberals and conservatives get angry with the government. The difference is how we express it. He says conservatives write letters, liberals protest. And there is some trueness to that. But let's look at President Charles de Gaulle and his view on authority. I grew up always respecting authority and respecting those who are in charge. Now, the conservative view of authority is respect for the position. They don't necessarily have to like the person. You could hear a statement like, I don't have to like the person I voted for, I just have to agree with their policies. So that is a very conservative viewpoint on authority. Now, people with liberal values tend to have a distrust for authority. Let's look at what they had to say. Civil disobedience requires no permission slip. In other words, if I do not feel that what you are doing is right, if I do not trust what you are doing, I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to tell you about it standing in your face, and I'm going to be loud about it. The problem is that a person of conservative values sees that as irreverent and disrespectful because you respect the position, even if you don't like the person. So you can see here that we're speaking different languages and we have to learn each other's language. We're looking at the world through slightly different lenses, and that is the reason why we have to take the time to understand each other. We have to seek to understand, because if we don't, then the path we're headed down is not a very good one. So the person of more conservative values has to seek to understand the person of liberal values and understand that their distrust for authority is not necessarily a bad thing. And it's the same for the person who is of liberal values. What it all comes down to is we have to trust each other, because if we don't, we'll continue on the path that we're on. And that is not a path that I want to leave for my children. So please, with me, can we all seek to understand